What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Ash Survive Show. On the couch, yeah. But the Ash Survive Show mostly. My name's Malik Harris.
My name's Makatochini.
And this Ash Survive Show is where you come to
Vibe with the tribe.
So, today we are jumping into why blah, 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 blue.
Why Warhammer Fantasy is better than 40k.
Yes, good job, friend. Yeah, we're gonna, for those of you who know, we've been jumping into, we jumped into a lot of Warhammer 40k content, all the faction videos, all the legions and, you know what I mean, timelines and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I think the last lore stuff we did was, I think it was the Trazen videos. Trazen? This is not Trazen, but this is a Necron, you know what I mean? It is, you know, I am also reading the Necron book. I don't know where any of our stuff is. We have too many things at this point.
On the shelf of stuff.
Oh yeah, The Infinite and the Divine. If you guys have read that book, it's a great book so far. Yeah, a lot of craziness. It's a lot different than all the Horus Heresy stuff that I was reading previously. But here we are comparing why Warhammer Fantasy is better than 40k. We just went through the Total War Warhammer, all the cinematics. I think it was like 120 something.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. It was crazy. It took a while. I'm not gonna lie. It took us like a good month or so to kind of just like go through everything, because we're also, you know, reading, playing the game, Space Marines, and all this good things. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Pancreas No Work thinks about why fantasy is better than 40k, and then afterwards, you know, we'll give our opinions on what we like more between fantasy and Warhammer 40k at this point. You know, we still got a lot more lore and a lot more videos that we're planning on jumping into.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. We haven't even got to like any space dwarf stuff, Votan, or any of those things. So there's still more of the world to explore. But at this point, you know, we'll give our opinion.
The galaxy.
Mm-hmm. The galaxy, far
galaxy.
away.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into this shits.
Flop my schmeat onto the table for all to see and judge. As you can probably guess from the title, I think Warhammer Fantasy is a better setting than Warhammer 40k. I much prefer it to 40k for a whole variety of reasons, and I figured I'd tell you all those reasons a little more low-key of a video while the Malekith one is waiting to come out and the Tau Do or Don't is in the works. Probably shouldn't have to tell you this, but this is my opinion, not the word of Christ Almighty himself. So if I say something here you disagree with, that's okay. Opinions are nice like that. There's rarely a single correct one. This is a Warhammer YouTube channel, not a congressional hearing. But I'll throw some actual reasons your way too, just to pretend I can analyze these settings at a level approaching rational thought. So sit back and enjoy the background Total War footage with occasional pictures while I lay my smooth-brained thought processes out for you. But before I go on, look at this really quickly. One, I'd be terribly grateful if you did what it says, but also I want to give a massive thanks to Barry Waltz for throwing this together for me. I made a silly, poorly edited meme when he overtook me in subs. He gives me something I can use for the rest of my YouTube career. What a class act, that Barry. I don't know how to get rid of the black bar or the green screen, so it's going to stay like this and add to the general trashy feel of my channel. Not that it's trashy itself, it's just me handling anything someone gives me as trashy, you see. Anyways, I don't know what I'm doing. Time to talk about why I think fantasy is better. First of all, and this is a reason that can't really be debated unlike some of the others because it's just personal taste, I prefer fantasy to sci-fi. I like dragons and wizards more than I like spaceship fights and planetary bombardment. Don't get me wrong, sci-fi is still amazing and I love it. I mean, I've got a Halo tattoo among other things, I gotta love sci-fi a bit, but I just prefer fantasy to it. That being said, there are still a few ways within the context of Warhammer that gives fantasy an edge over 40k in this department. Something I read online that I'm a big fan of quoting is that 40k is a fantasy setting cosplaying as science fiction. I mean, there's demons and hyperspace travel involves going through hell. I hope I'm not breaking anyone's mind by saying 40k isn't exactly hard science fiction. But it's still somewhat sci-fi, so this means it has to justify things a bit more than fantasy does. For example, psychic powers. In 40k, the Chaos Gods all have various things related to psychic powers and how souls work in the universe to explain how in a setting that's supposedly sci-fi, there's evil gods and demons. Each of them came about at various points in history in response to events in the material world. It's a similar situation with the old ones and their creations. The Eldar gods, for instance, might not be gods, but either manifestations of Eldar belief, or the old ones taking on the role of gods to survive. Either way, you get people like the Emperor taking on the argument that there are no gods in this setting, just things we don't understand that are evil and pretending to be gods. There's more work being done to justify why the setting is the way it is. Psychic powers themselves also suffer from a similar effect. You see, when Ahriman blasts some poor bastard with lightning, he's not using magic. It's actually psychic powers emanating from a realm beyond human comprehension. Totally.
Okay, I do want to have a note. This video is only 13 minutes, but my man Pancreas does talk pretty quickly. So there's a lot of concepts that are being jumped into very very quickly, and if we don't pause it periodic through this video, then we're just we're gonna end up sitting here just glued to this fucking screen the entire time. So
Yeah.
I am gonna be taking notes. We used to do this a lot more when we were diving into lore videos. I kind of want to hear his perspective on it. I already have my opinion on what I like and kind of like why I like, either or. But I'm definitely going to take notes on all the things he says, and then maybe I'll come out with like a different opinion, and at the end I'll do like this is what I thought before, and after listening to what he said, actually I feel this way now, not the two different, just so you know too, so that way you can have your own too, as well.
Herman blasts some poor bastard with lightning, he's not using magic. It's actually psychic powers emanating from a realm beyond human comprehension. Totally not magic. Look at all these reasons we have listed for you that someone resurrecting with the power of someone else called the God Emperor isn't magic. You know what the justification is for there being gods and magic in Warhammer Fantasy? It's a fucking fantasy setting. Of course there's wizards and evil gods, they're just part of the setting. There's much less legwork needed to be done in order to make the setting work. There's also the advantage inherent in fantasy settings that people more or less know a lot about everything involved before they even get into the setting. For instance, high elves are going to be arrogant, aloof, and good at magic. Dwarfs like beer, live in mountains, and eat rocks. This makes the setting much easier to jump right into because if you're getting into Warhammer Fantasy, you presumably know what an elf is. Sure, the specifics might trip you up a bit, like orcs are a bit different in Warhammer than anywhere else, but you can get a handle on the broad strokes before you even read into the lore. Meanwhile, 40k has to explain pretty much everything. What's a Primarch? What's a Space Marine chapter? Why is everything heresy? Even if some of these things have simple answers, they still need answers, whereas with fantasy, you can just jump right into it. This makes it a lot easier to get into Warhammer Fantasy than 40k.
Honestly, I'm gonna pause right there. I think that alone is like a big identifier. I realized when we got into 40k, it was like, oh man, there's so much knowledge, my brain. And granted, we jumped into a timeline video first, so it was like, not only were we trying to understand the creatures and the Primarchs and this and that. Yeah, then we're also like speeding through this whole thing, and it was just like, oh man. But I feel like that still kind of laid like a foundation of like, okay, we see kind of the scope of how potentially big it could be. And then you like dive into everything, and I feel like, I think I said that when we first got into fantasy, it's like a lot of the concepts you pretty much already know. You know what I mean? It's like elves are gonna be elves, this is gonna be that. And then when you get into the like even like expansive concepts like chaos elves, it's like, okay, I know what chaos is, I know what elves are. It's like the two together. You know what I'm saying? I would love to learn about the details from there, and get like the gaps filled in. But I feel like when I got into like Primarchs and I got into just fucking
Legions.
Are they called Space Marines? Are they called whatever the fuck? It just seemed like so many different intricacies. But I do like Space Marines kind of versus the world, because it almost feels like we actually can fight against something and win. Compared to fantasy, it seems like the demons and all the crazy shit's going on.
Yeah.
The humans just have no chance, at least perception-wise. So I feel like I just don't want to be a human at all in the fantasy realm. At least up in space, it's like maybe I can picture myself as a Space Marine, and that's kind of human. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. It's almost like the difference between, for me, Star Trek and Star Wars back in the day. For some reason, Star Wars just seems so much more easily digestible. And then Star Trek was just like, they're spanning so much of the galaxy, and every episode was different planets. And I love Star Trek. I mean, I had fucking Nemesis and shit on DVD. I had a bunch of like the, different DVDs and shit like that. But it was just like kind of a lot. There was no type of container, and that's kind of how 40K feels for me a long time. So
I kind of want to add on to what you're saying about being into fantasy. You're almost like condensed to just being on a planet.
That too.
And over in Space Marines 40K, you're literally going through the warp and going to different edges of the universe or another universe.
Yeah.
For them, it seems like they're just going from the demon realm to the Earth realm.
Yeah, continent to continent. You know what I mean? So
it's like,
yeah, you literally can play Total War, Warhammer, and then you can see everything, and you're just like, okay, cool, I understand where we're at now. You know what I mean? I still don't know where the fuck I'm ever at in 40K. I'm like, what planet is this again? Like, there's so many. And I know, and I've looked at the map of like the Primarchs and the planets they come from, but I still don't even know like relatively like what does that even mean? Are you still there? Aren't you out exploring the galaxy? Like, do you ever even go back to that planet? You know what I mean? It's just, and It's craziness. All right, let's jump back.
Something a bit less meta, let's talk about the scale of the settings. Warhammer 40k is a gigantic blob of a science fiction universe. I mean, look at this map. There's a whole lot of diddly in the 40k galaxy. Now let's go back down to Warhammer Fantasy. It's a single world that looks a whole lot like Earth, with a not Atlantis right in the not Atlantic. Thankfully, there's still a landmass roughly equivalent to Florida, so rest assured there's certainly some lizardmen and or dark elves in that area high on bath salts. At first you might go bigger is better, and in some ways 40k's massive size does give it an advantage over Fantasy. There's far more room for homebrews and large-scale adventures to take place in without upsetting the status quo, but that's very much a double-edged sword. There's plenty of downsides to it, and one is that the scale of 40k can keep individual achievements from meaning anything. Let's say some Chaos Lord blows up a planet. Okay. Cool, I guess. That's nothing. Inquisitors do that regularly. Biel-Tan regularly cleanses all life on a planet down to the bacteria on it. A character can conquer a system, and there'll be 100 like him who've done equally as much, if not more. But going back to Fantasy, it's a single planet. Destroying certain cities can mean a whole lot, even though it's just a single city. It gives a much better scale of threat than GW having to just keep upping the amount of planets someone conquers to mean anything. There will always be more planets in the Imperium. Just conquering one doesn't mean anything for a character. But if some guy and his band of Chaos Goobers take down a city at the edge of the Empire, that can mean something. Depending on what the city was, you can get an actual sense of scale out of that. Another advantage of Fantasy's scale is that you can actually get a sense of threat based on where a battle or threat takes place. Space is very big. Realistically speaking, a Chaos incursion taking place 30,000 light years away from Terra is no more of a threat than one taking place 3,000 light years away from it. But the writers of GW are going to make the second one seem worse because it's technically closer, even though in both cases the enemy is still a massive, massive amount of distance away from the throne world. It's space. You can't march an army across the galaxy, no slow attrition warfare across the land. It's just 3,000 is closer than 30,000, therefore that's a big deal, ignoring the fact that realistically speaking, those are both such massive distances with such massive amounts of planets and star systems in the way that they're almost equivalent. But now let's go look at a map of the Empire of Man. Let's say Chaos Raiders are on the coast of Nordland. Who gives a shit? You can probably see Norska from the coastline if the weather permits. Viking raiders coming into pillage is like the first snowfall of the year. It's just part of life. You can tell based on its location that it's not a meaningful threat to the Empire if a Norskan raid goes into Nordland. But let's say the Chaos Raiders are now in Ubersreich. The exact same amount of raiders with the exact same gear and the exact same amount of attention from the Chaos Gods. Without changing the number of invaders or their strength at all, you just scaled the threat level up massively, because now they aren't in bumfuck nowhere, they're in the capital province of the Empire and a stone's throw away from Altdorf, the capital city. You can infer so many more things about the threat than in 40k solely based on its location and distance from other locations. One last thing to touch on with the scale before moving on is similar to my first point. With a few exceptions, a location being destroyed in 40k just doesn't mean anything due to how many more near identical versions of the location exist. Oh no, Forge World Hephaestus was destroyed. What will we do? Oh, there's another 1,000 of them. Sure, some worlds will matter more, but there will always be more worlds. There will always be enough Forge Worlds or Agur Worlds or whatever the hell worlds to keep the Imperium at the level of things are getting very bad, but we aren't quite crumbling yet. The only way to make a particular location important is for the writers to say it's important for one reason or another. This Forge World is important because it has a certain tech blueprint. This Agur World is important because it feeds 100 other worlds. And even knowing that, there will always be more planets to fill in the gap. Again, there are exceptions. Cadia blowing up was pretty consequential, to put it mildly, and either of the two passages between the Great Rift falling would certainly be bad news, to say the least. But for the most part, the Imperium can lose 100 planets in a day and it means nothing. Now go back to Fantasy. Let's say a horde of beastmen raise a city. Pillars of literal shit erected up to mark the hunting grounds, the Side of Order has no more presence here, victory for Chaos. As small a change as that might be in the grand scale of things, it's infinitely more impactful in Fantasy because that's it. There's no replacement for that city sitting around the galaxy. There won't be a lost one to find in some forgotten corner of reality. That city's gone, and without a major effort, it won't ever be replaced or come back. Strategic locations and resources mean so much more because there's not another dozen essentially identical versions of them located across the galaxy. A critical fortress world can be destroyed, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's space, you can go around it. But you can't go around Helmgard. Unless you're the Skaven, then you just go under it. To stop rambling on about scale, the characters in Warhammer Fantasy just feel more relatable and appreciable as people. Part of that is probably GW's focus on Marines. I'm not a super soldier in the year 40,000, I don't fight massive battles on the daily. I admit this might just be a me thing, but I find it hard to relate to the demigod son of the Emperor feeling a bit snubbed by his divine daddy. Also, this whole video is about a me thing anyways, but I digress.
Okay. Now we're jumping into another section. He's more talking about the characters thing.
Yeah.
The characters is something I had said in Warhammer 40k when we first jumped into it. Playing Space Marine 2 and then seeing, or not even Space Marine 2, watching Secret Level, you know, the very first thing we seen, and then meeting Titus and then seeing how much of a badass he was, and then seeing like almost like his father figure in a certain sense, and really having like those characters to really cling on to really changed a lot. Because I think since we came in like that, I was like, oh, this is dope. Oh, Titus is like my guy, blah, blah. And then I get into like reading the book, Horus Heresy Rising, and it's like, okay, now we're following a bunch of other characters. You know what I mean? You meet Horus and you meet, all the different...
Which takes thousands of years ahead of...
Yeah, which is, it's like none of the things I've learned matter at all, really, compared to what's happening here. You know what I mean? And I think that part is a little weird because it's almost like, I feel like the investing into something could mean nothing. Especially even getting into the miniatures, right? Like I know a lot of times I see people talking about this on our Discord. You get into like, let's say randomly Kill Team or something like that. And then they decide not to put out any new packs for your specific faction for however long, or no good packs that you actually like. So then you're like, okay, I got these certain amount of units and this is cool and all, but I think I'm going to go over there now because I'm bored, you know what I mean, with this. So, and it's just having that scale be so big that it's like, you can't really give everything attention all the time, you know what I mean? I think Marvel and DC kind of has similar issues where there's so many characters they haven't touched because they keep making Superman movies or Batman movies or, you know what I mean, like remakes and stuff. So, yeah, but people love it. People are going to keep buying the Batman, Superman, Spider-Man over and over and over again because they've grown so attached to that character, you know what I mean?
Well, it's also to go back and say a lot of the superheroes is what they actually seen and know for the first time getting into comic books and stuff like that. The 40K, it was just... You got the whole entire Space Marines 40K, even the 30K, that's been around forever. So it's like a lot of those people that seen it and played it and read the books and invested into it are going to stay, keep it, invest in it. So when fantasy comes out, they're like, oh, let me give it a try. But then you get the newer people, newer age that love fantasy and they'll jump into it like, oh yeah, I love fantasy. So you get those contradictions between one another through like Marvel and DC. You could do and retell the stories over and over and over again for 40K, but fantasy could just be fantasy however you want to play it. But with the Space Marines, I feel like this is your Empire, these are your Goblins, these are your Necrons, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you're basically saying like that you're being told more what everything is compared to kind of being able to conceptualize what it is in your head. Yeah, so yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'd definitely say 40K. They're just like, yo, this is what it is. You know what I mean? There is no, don't think of anything else. You know what I mean? Whereas fantasy, it's like, oh, I already kind of know what this is, and then you're kind of just being enlightened, I guess, in a sense. And it's weird because you can make your own factions in 40K and stuff like that, and you do all these different. We haven't got too deep into that part of it, but I don't know. Very interesting, man. Very interesting.
Ignoring that, however, the people in 40K almost seem like empty shells. I'm struggling to explain exactly what I mean, so how about I try and pull a valid example? Karl Franz, yeah, I'm sure you could predict that was my example, is the Emperor of the Empire of Man, Prince and Emperor of Reichland, wielder of Galmaraz, and yes, I am going to introduce him with that full set of titles every time I bring him up for the first time in a video. He's a noble warrior and great statesman, but by his own admission in Total Warhammer, he does some dark stuff to keep the Empire safe. A witch hunter can order a town burned to the ground because he thinks a chaos worshipper or vampire might have power there, and he does it with Karl's stamp of approval. But he does this because he cares for his country, his people. This is just the only way he can see the Empire surviving another day. He's motivated by the goodness and patriotism in his heart, even though the deeds he approves of are horrendous. Even the evil characters get a lot of depth like this, with some exceptions. Nagash, Sigvald, all of the Skaven ever. Vlad wants power and to rule the Empire, but he gives at least a bit of a damn about the average human in the world at a level beyond walking, talking blood juice box. Characters in 40K, meanwhile, often just seem to do the things they do because it's expected of them, and relatedly are massive assholes because otherwise the setting wouldn't suck. Why do Space Marines fight chaos? Well, there's so many chapters that it varies, but a lot of the time I get the impression the reason is because that's what they're supposed to do. Do they massacre civilians even though they hate it because they just think they need to? No, not really. They just do that because that's what Marines do. They don't give a damn about humanity or even fellow Space Marines. They just fight because they need to fight. There's no motivation beyond fighting. That's it. A lot of Space Marine chapters commit evil deeds not because it's a necessity, but because they're the dickhead chapter and the dickhead chapter has to be dickheads. They commit evil deeds just because that's their role in life, not because they think this is the only option and they hate every minute of it. And yes, I'm aware they're brainwashed child soldiers, but my viewpoint on that is just because there's a reason for something being boring doesn't make it not boring. It's like when a video game character is made to be annoying on purpose. Good job, you succeeded. I still hate them. A lot lot of 40k characters also fit templates. This man is a salamander. He's kind to the common man and likes fire. This is an Eldar. She's aloof and mystical and arrogant as all hell, only really caring about herself and other Eldar. There are exceptions, don't get me wrong. Caiaphas Cain and the Gaunt books especially break the mold of their factions. But reading about 40k characters a lot of the time, it seems like they take the standard template for a faction and then add a quirk or two. Fantasy still has templates for characters, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. I'm not going to show that much favoritism. This isn't Halo I'm talking about. But let's look at a few of the high elf characters. There's Teclis, a crippled mage who does his best to keep the realms of man and elf safe, not just his own. There's Eltharion the Grim, the living epitome of a brick wall who cares about nothing but defending his homeland and ensuring that Yvres never falls to orcs like it once nearly did. There's Aletha Nar, who's basically just a spirit of vengeance against dark elves that never got around to dying because he's so damn focused on killing more dark elves he just doesn't age. None of them are anything like each other. And that's ignoring Finnabar, Tyrion, Kalador Dragon Tamer, and all sorts of minor characters. There are 2 minor high elf characters in a Gotrek and Felix book that to my knowledge never appear in another book, and each of them were completely distinct from anyone else. In fantasy, not only are the characters more relatable, but they don't feel nearly as reliant on templates. Templates still exist, but it feels like they don't to anywhere near the same extent. Something else about fantasy I personally find appealing is that its history is fairly concise and laid out. Now, I'm not that much of a fool. I know that 40k's vibe of history and culture being lost and forgotten is a major part of the setting, especially the Imperium. And the setting as a whole would certainly be lesser if that wasn't the case. But I'm still a silly guy who majored in history. I like seeing the entire chain of events leading into one another, reading about the people and revolutions that changed the world, and with fantasy, you get exactly that. There's still some mystery, like precisely what the old ones were doing beyond preparing for chaos, or how exactly the Skaven came about, given that there's like 5 different accounts from the doom of Kavzar to the sea god cursing some sailors. But everything from Sigmar's rise to the War of the Beard to Nagash are all fairly well accounted for. You can read exactly why elves and dwarves hate each other, just how Malekith's rise to power went down. There's little theory crafting or anything like it involved. That too has its downsides in that there's much less interesting debates and theories to discuss, but like I said earlier, this is a matter of taste. And also, like I said earlier, just because there's a reason something is the way that it is doesn't mean I have to like it.
It's interesting because I feel like, to some of his points, it's like a double-edged sword here, but the Space Marines, because they all are like that template of like they're all child soldiers, so that none of them have personality, which it's like, you almost could like equate that to, let's say, like Stormtroopers or something like that. They're all clones, you know, they all have like this and that. But even within that, you have the Stormtroopers and then you have the Jedis. So you have that extra element. And Stormtroopers are still iconic, and I think what 40K does well is things are conceptually interesting. Yes. You know what I mean? They're like there's not necessarily the emotional connection there, but conceptually you're like, the concept of they're so powerful that they have, you know, this many guts and this many lungs and this many, you know what I mean? That concept is crazy. But like when you see like how it affects them, their mental and emotional state, and this is coming, you know, I do write. I've wrote for a long time. I've published 20 plus comic books and graphic novels. I wrote novel at the age of 14, got it published when I was 18, wrote like award-winning short films and shit like that. So I've invested a lot of time into like writing and learning storylines and all that good stuff. So yeah, when I say like, yeah, granted that doesn't mean I'm an expert, but when I say that I got into 40K and I was just like, it didn't feel like there was that much to grasp onto. And then you have all the Primarchs and stuff like that, all the main leaders. And I still didn't feel like, I still haven't picked a favorite Legion. And I don't know if that's, I always kind of ask myself, like somebody had posted in the comments like, oh, what did you guys decide? Like, who's your favorite Legions and this and that? And I'm like, well, it's weird because I would normally choose a Legion because of, that leader or, the right hand man. Like, let's say we're talking about anime or something like that. And it's like, oh, what's your favorite anime? Or what's your favorite duo in anime? I'm like, oh, shit. I feel like Goku Vegeta, or I feel like Luffy and Zoro, or I feel like, you know what I mean? And there's specific things. So it's like, if a person asked me, like, if you had to make a 5-person team or something like that, I would pick that because the team members that are in there. Whereas it's always just the concepts when it comes to Legions. Like, do you like people who are kind of, salamanders, for example, people who are like not so bad, or do you like these people who are still bad, but they're only bad on Tuesdays? You know what I mean? That shit is like,
you want your pyromaniacs, you want your Vikings, you want your assassins, hunters.
But the concepts still feel like they're still so close, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas fantasy, it's like they're completely different. Like the Tomb Kings and fucking Vampire Count are just, you don't even play, like even when you play the game, you don't even play the same. You're just, one's on a boat and shit like that, and you go from island to island, whereas one's like crossing and trekking the land and shit like that. So, and I think Total War, Warhammer really opened up my eyes to like, oh shit, this shit feels more expansive than 40K in a way because the concepts are so this, but it's on a smaller planet, which is very interesting. You know, it's like quality over quantity is kind of what it seemed like. So, yeah.
What you were saying? kind of agree and kind of recognize and see a lot of those similarities, but totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different.
Yeah. Between the two different settings. Trazen's another good example because I feel like reading that Infinite and Divine, just like the first 2 or 3 chapters of him trying to protect these artifacts and stuff, like, oh, I want to preserve history and this is really important. Like, he seems like more human than like most of the Space Marines, and he's literally like pretty much a robot now. He's almost like a fucking Terminator type of creature. You know what I'm saying?
Is it mechanized?
Yeah, he's a Necron.
Is it Necron?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's the history.
The history one we watched the video.
Okay.
In the book, The Infinite Divine, there's like 2 different leaders, and they're both going up. And it's like, he's kind of like an old dude in a way because he's like so much. He's like a, ancient.
He's like around from the beginning almost.
Yeah, so he almost feels like a grandpa in a way, but he's still like on adventures and shit, like almost like Indiana Jones in the beginning. And I'm just like, damn, this feels like, I don't know why this feels so much more. I feel like just upbeat, even though it's still dark. People still dying and shit like that. So the fact that certain robot characters like that feel like, damn, this is more of a human, relatable character than the Space Marines. The Space Marines are kind of the main point of, obviously, it's arguable. Mm-hmm. But, they're kind of like the main foundation of 40K. It makes me wonder, is it because 40K's writing is just fucking fantastic, you know what I mean, that feels like that? Or is it because their main foundational piece is just not that bright, so everything else kind of like outlasts? Like, there's a lot of people I know who collect miniatures and stuff who are like, oh, I love orcs way more than Space Marines, or I love pretty much anything else except for Space Marines, you know what I mean? So and I pose that question to you guys too, like in the comments, post down, like, do you guys love 40K because of the Space Marines, or do you love it because of the other factions, or do you not love it at all and you're like, yo, fantasy is superior? I'm really interested to see it. I'm probably going to post this in our Discord too and just run that little poll. If you guys are in the Discord, you can post in the comments for sure. Make sure to go post in the Discord too if you want to dive deeper, because I want to talk about that. All right.
A very weak point, but this whole video is subjective, so why don't I end on something that's 110% subjective, as opposed to the rest of this video just being 100% subjective. The Total War, Warhammer, and Vermintide games absolutely knock it out of the park. By quantity, I think 40K has more good games, and it has some absolute bangers, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, anyone who's a fan of RTS games that doesn't think Dawn of War is amazing either hasn't played it or is lying to you. Space Marine is a fun little snacky third-person shooter, and Mechanicus I'm sure needs no introduction. But out of the enjoyment I've gotten out of the games, Fantasy has it won by a long shot. A lot of people started learning new hobbies and skills in 2020 when we were all stuck at home, from cooking to even painting miniatures, more related to the hobby. I woke up, booted up Steam, and played Total Warhammer 2 for 8 hours. Summer 2020 was the summer of Total Warhammer for me. And I think I'm wrapped up here. That's all my major reasons for why I think Fantasy is better than 40K. Do keep in mind I've been specifically referring to Warhammer Fantasy and not Age of Sigmar, because some of the things I said about the scale of the setting, for instance, apply just as well to AOS as they do to 40K. And with that, I think I'm also out of strawman arguments I can think of to defend myself with. Either way, do let me know in the comments why whatever Warhammer setting you like the most is your favorite. I'm happy to read them, because this is all about personal enjoyment, and I love to hear what makes people interested in the setting they chose to champion. Malekith is coming out soon. This should be going up before that's out. Don't tell anyone I told you this one, but me and some other fellas have some Necron stuff coming out soon. More on that to come. Ooh. Shout out again to Barry Waltz for gifting me that wonderful little subscribe notification. He's a real pal. Go sub to Brigingo Waltathan. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful channel members. You are the Galmaraz to my Warhammer. Without you, it just wouldn't be the same around here. If you'd like to support the channel, consider subscribing or becoming a member. Either way, thanks for watching and take care out there. And of course, Dami Mami Marathi is in Fantasy, therefore making it the best setting by default. My parents once said to make sure I don't put anything that might harm me on YouTube in one way or another, nothing that'll be embarrassing for me in the future. And for when more of my family finally finds this channel, I'd just like to say this in response to that. You would need the force of 10,000 industrial strength cranes to pull my tongue out of Marathi's asshole.
Jesus Christ. Damn. I feel like League of Legends, like Necrit, he doesn't speak that fast. Like, he's kind of, breaks everything down. But I feel like a lot of Warhammer creators speak really, really fast. I think because there's so much that you have to kind of cover.
Yeah.
It's like you have to speed through everything. Otherwise, you're going to have fucking 2-hour-long videos, which people still, have those videos. So, understandable. But again, that's one of those things where sometimes I feel like when you have to overly explain things, it's like because the concept isn't dialed in enough, and with it being so expansive, it's like obviously it's still growing and this and that. So Warhammer's a very interesting IP, you know what I mean? One thing I can say is, despite if you love fantasy, if you like Age of Sigmar, if you like 40K, if you're in the hobby and you love it, then that's all that really fucking matters, you know what I mean?
At the end of the day,
we don't need to be too nitpicky, But for the fun of it, I do want to hear your guys' opinions, personal perspectives and whatnot. So I feel like you guys might already think, yeah, I know what the fuck he likes. Obviously, he's been talking the whole video, stupid guy. But I have some other thoughts and opinions to finalize everything. Before that, I do want to give a shout out to a lot of people on our Discord who have been posting every day. Edion.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully that's right. I feel like I should know this by now. After fucking 6 months of posting. Maybe it hasn't been 6 months. I feel like I should know that. Kratos the Gamer, your GOAT. Mr. Oogie Boogie. Also, your back and forth with Edion is always super funny to me.
It's hilarious.
Also, all the, the constant, like, uplifting, banter and shit like that. It makes it feel like I don't know what it feels like. It feels like almost like a
good community.
Yeah, but like when a bunch of guys get together, like go to a bar and like fuck around and shit like that.
Oh, it's shooting their shit.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that a lot of the time. So whenever I pop in there, it's always a fucking good vibe. Cavantis. I hope. I don't know why I'm reading these fucking names, man. I should just post them. Cheap Soda, fucking in there all the time. Also the GOAT. Tired Cowboy. Some of these people, some of y'all are new, you know what I mean? But you guys have been repping your shit. It's been dope. I'm doing the most relevant. Oh, Rudy Picardo. You know what you do. I appreciate you.
You know what you do.
Oh, Sir Dies a Lot. Fuck. I don't know if I said that already. Yeah. All right. Okay, that's cool. Now, 40K sucks. No, I'm just kidding. Oh! No, 40K, I still have like a love for it, and I think we've dove into the lore deeper. I mean, at this point, I have 4 of the books. Yeah, because I have Infinite Divine, so I feel like it's unfair because I've dove in so much deeper into 40K, and to me it feels like 40K is what Warhammer is kind of leading with, like with the whole new universe and stuff like that, and Henry Cavill coming into everything. I feel like inevitably I don't have a choice but to like 40K more in a way. I think if they start diving into the fantasy, and maybe I don't know about this part of it, but they start diving into the fantasy world and there were like more bigger cinematics, like the Space Marine secret level short and thing, like something as simple as that honestly won me over from the beginning. So and then you get into like a lot of the creators like Bricky, a lot of his videos are more 40K focused, and since we dove so many of those and we kind of have like an attachment to him and his style of stuff, I feel like that's pulled me a lot. Pinker's work is really, really dope. You know what I mean? There's a couple other people as well that are really good on the fantasy side. But, we got a lot more lore to dive into. We've only scratched the surface barely. I don't even know if it's been 6 months. I feel like it's been...
It might have been. It might be 6 months.
Somewhere close to 6 months, but nowhere near as much as we've invested into so many other IPs. So, yeah, you guys stick around. You guys will see our opinions change as time goes on.
Nah, 40K forever.
40K?
40K forever.
You like fantasy, or you like sci-fi more than fantasy? Or
man, I'm a big, huge Star Wars nerd. Mm-hmm. So anything to do with like being out in space and the extraterrestrial stuff and just being able to just do all that stuff, I'm all about it. I like fantasy, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a lot more people are getting into fantasy to where it's like, it's almost like overbearing to like hear and see and just like out in the real world, not like out in the video games or online and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna stick with what I like, honestly. I mean, you can't be the blade saw, and you can't be a bolt rifle gun.
Yeah, that is the thing. Yeah, a lot more advanced technology. I've always been like a future person. Like even growing up, I always liked the Star Wars. Always like Marvel, DC, anime more so because conceptually, I just felt like it really like pushed the boundaries for me. There's a lot of science in there, but that leads into the whole science fiction realm. You have the Tony Starks, you have the whatever else. Every superhero is kind of a scientist. The Spider-Man, the Hulk, the fucking everybody. So when it comes to science fiction, that's definitely my jazz. And I feel like recently fantasy has become like, when I say recently, I've been into shit my entire life. So you know what I mean. 20, 30 years of craziness. I say 20 or 30 because inside the womb, you know what I mean? I was definitely listening to fantasy and sci-fi. It was crazy. I was living in fantasy and sci-fi. The fuck is this? No, but a lot of I really grew up loving...
Light speed, but that's a lie. You're just born.
That's sick.
Hey, you brought it up, man.
Yeah, Warhammer's fucked us up, honestly. We would have never said that on camera before. Warhammer, this is your fault. A lot of the stories we do write too. We do have our own, universe and stuff. We do have some of our original comics up here actually. Omega Ghost is more of like that side. Omega Ghost is more like sci-fi superhero. You go into this one, sci-fi superhero. This is Book 0, Part 1 and 2. And then we have Book 0, Part 3 that will be coming out soon. That's why I decided to put these up here today. You have Neutropia, which is our fantasy world. And then this kind of goes more to the hero world. So we have a sci-fi world, a fantasy world that connects the hero world to the fantasy. Jesus Christ. Sci-fi world, fantasy world, and a superhero world. And the fantasy world kind of connects the two. So you have a bunch of different like creatures from all these different planets and shit who are refuge, who end up going to the fantasy planet. And on this fantasy planet, they can cross species, co-create and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So you have fucking elves fucking hooking up with horses and shit like that, and then you get centaurs. So it's almost like the birthplace of a lot of fantasy creatures and things like that you're familiar with. You know what I mean? So we have in the sci-fi world, there's like their origin state that feeds into that. So it gets crazy, man. Long story short, it's crazy. But we have those three different universes because we love all three. We love superhero stuff, we love fantasy, we love sci-fi.
Yep.
So yeah, at the end of the day, we're going to continue to jump into both. We don't really have like a main one and only. But yeah, you guys let us know your guys' opinion down below. And I'm done talking. Talked a lot in this video. A lot of thoughts, man.
I feel it.
A lot of thoughts.
40K right. Forever. Thank you guys for being here and watching this video with us. Until then, we'll see you next time. For the Emperor!
Much love, y'all. Blood for the Blood God.